He ended up coming up to Rotorua with a lot of hard work and saved and worked tirelessly with my. Then they opened up, became restaurateurs in New Zealand, and they were one of the first. They were the first fully licensed restaurant to open a restaurant and be able to sell alcohol in the 70s in the North Island. And back then it was quite a huge thing. It was dine and dance. You'd come in and eat and dance. Maybe might ring a few bells there, Willard. And they were in the Tudor Towers in Rotorua, so it was just a huge. It was just huge in the 70s and in the 80s, in the early 80s. So when I arrived on the scene, I grew up with my granddad quite a lot in Rotorua after moving over from Australia. And he didn't speak a lot. He never shared recipes. I didn't learn the language from him. He was quite reserved, and I don't know, there was a big gap. I didn't teach my father or his brothers. They didn't learn Czech, so for reasons I'm not too sure. But growing up with him, I knew that he did spend a lot of time in the kitchen, and I was quite curious, and there was a lot of food like tripe and cow's tongues and things like this, which was quite interesting. I mean, growing up having cow tongue sandwiches, going to school, you know, you wouldn't normally share your lunch. Well, nobody wanted to swap any sandwiches, that's for sure. So, he actually had after he finished with the restaurants, he opened up he had his own piggery and farm. So I spent all my school holidays working there, cleaning out pig cells, and you know, yeah, it wasn't that smell of pig doesn't come off easy. So it's a very, yeah, it was quite secluded school holidays, cleaning up after pigs. So, but when I did finally start to open up with my granddad, he started to open up more about his past and where he grew up from. The main thing was about cooking and what did you do, where did you learn, where did you train? And he said, I didn't train, I'm not a trained chef. It was all about experience. And I was through my first year of cooking school, and I had no money, and I thought, this is terrible. You're learning and you're working and you've got a student loan. So after he told me that, I dropped out and I just went straight to the best places I could find. Like, first job was at Sky City in Orbit, a revolving restaurant, as a commis chef there when I was 20. And that was just a massive thrill to be in a massive production kitchen, probably one of the most iconic restaurants at that time in Auckland. So then my goal was to set out was to go and try work at the best place I could and be surrounded by the best people I could be with. So when I moved I went straight to Czech Republic to learn about where the family came from and the history. And I thought that would be a good start to learn about food culture. And I thought I'd go to Czech Republic and make, you know, knedlíky, which is dumplings, and goulash, and you know, be all fun. But when I got there, I really quickly realised I didn't speak the language, and I had no idea what I was doing in the city, Prague. And I did freak out. I did think, what have I got myself into? But after my meltdown, I obviously started looking around and door knocking and going to the centre of Prague, which is Old Town, where I found an Asian fusion restaurant, and the head chef, she was an English chef. So my first kitchen, I was able to work in an English-speaking kitchen, and it was Asian fusion as well. So it was totally nothing what I imagined to go to the Middle Eastern Europe for, was to work in Asian fusion. Shortly after, we got into a Michelin guide, which is over there they judge restaurants on, there's a Michelin star guide, so you can get 1, 2, 3 stars. And after our first 6 months, we got into the Michelin guide, which was huge. And then shortly after, they got their first Michelin star, so it was like a massive achievement. So my goal then was to try and go to France and work with the best, again, work with the best chefs. I did do my first trial in France at a Michelin star restaurant, and I cut my finger and they sent me home straight away. So I was straight back to Prague, and I couldn't understand, you know, why but I guess it's just some standards, you know, or maybe they just didn't like me, but I couldn't speak French either, so. So it was, so I went back working in the same restaurants, but the owners of the restaurant were restaurateurs as well, and they were opening up a fine dining French restaurant in Prague, by Old Town, by the Charles Bridge, by the river. And they told me they were getting a French chef and they wanted French cuisine, and so they ended up appointing a chef that worked under Alain Ducasse, who was at the time he was the first chef to get 3 restaurants with 3 Michelin stars in New York, Paris, and 2 in France. So they hired this guy, and so I asked if I could join them and work with them. So I was very, again, lucky enough, just dumb luck, being able to work under a French, high-end French fine dining restaurant and start from the start. And again, their goal was Michelin star, so that was probably the most, I guess, most challenging job in my life. Again, it was a French and Czech kitchen, so the language would break. And I've never been abused in so many different languages in my life. But it was interesting because we got a lot of produce from France. The Czech Republic isn't very, their fresh produce and sourcing is not, wasn't there at that time in the early 2000s or late 2000s. So we got all of our produce from France. We would drive to Budapest to pick up fresh frogwa, so it would take us 8 hours to drive to Budapest, and they would just have slaughtered the geese and given us the fresh livers, which were just being poached, be wrapped up in cling film, and we'd be loading 50 kilo of frogwa into our little Fiat and grabbing some salamis and then gunning it back to Prague, and it would take us like 5.5 hours to get back. And you'd have a whole brigade of chefs standing outside, bringing all the stuff upstairs, straight away backpacking it, putting it on ice, and then there we go, we got 50 kilo of frogwa to last us for about a month. So frogwa was just like gold. It was a signature part of our, our identity in Prague. So yeah, and then I guess after that I did have to leave the country just because I got sick of the winters. So it was like every winter was just very long and cold and dark, and it was quite depressing. The summers were too short, so I moved back to Australia, where I was actually born, and worked in private resorts around Australia for about 3 years in Ayers Rock, outside of Brisbane, and there's another one, sorry. And spent time refining my cuisine at these private resorts, because you have like 30 people at a time, and you're writing menus every day. You have the best of the best produce on your hands. And it was very small and very intimate, so you might be cooking for 3 or 4 people one night, just doing a 7-course degustation. And again, just refining your skills that you learned from what you learned abroad. After that, then it was time to work in some big high-end establishments. So I moved to Sydney and worked at Cafe Sydney, which is an iconic building in Custom Street, right looking over Circular Quay. And that was massive volume, 50 chefs, very cutthroat industry in Australia. Small town in the hospitality, if you sort of do something wrong or it seems to spread like wildfire. But again, it was very challenging, again, very hard. We were doing 300 covers for lunch, 300 covers for dinner, and it was the most popular, just such a popular place. And the view looking over the harbour was just exceptional. Like for New Year's Eve, we'd sell tickets for $900 a ticket, with 3-course ops and beverages to include, but that was just to look out over the fireworks over the harbour. So, and then I came back to New Zealand. I met a Kiwi girl and started back in Auckland again, and I started to go to hotels where I could learn more about the business side, because I knew I could cook, but the business acumen, I had none. I didn't know much about how you're costing or staff wages and how to run a business. So I spent the last 8 years in hotels, Pullman, Auckland, Novotel Ellerslie, in Green Lane, and then the largest hotel in New Zealand was just finished up at the Grand Millennium in Auckland, so which was well, we had the COVID then too when we first started there, so we actually turned into an isolation facility. So we were doing 600 meals a day for all the returnees, 3 times a day, 100% occupancy, so food revenue and was amazing. We're making $50,000 a day in food revenue. Thank you to the Labour government. So,
Yes.
so I guess that's where I came to where my business I thought was where I was inspired to do it. I've always wanted to do something, and I've been doing this now for about 3 years. But it was inspired from the COVID because, you know, it was all about catering for people, and everybody needs to eat, and you know, and you're always working under somebody, and I guess it's time to try and do something for yourself. So again, I have to thank the Labour government again, because it was a good, just the money they forked out for food was just incredible. So it was, we were feeding the 5-0s, or the 504s from the 501s.
From Australia.
Yeah, so they're bringing them back. And then again, we had to feed them 3 times a day. And I was like, shit, I'm in the wrong business.
Only 3 times a day?
Yep. So, and the business, it does come from, Zlati is from Czech, so it means gold. So I guess I was trying to make like it's gold catering. The pheasant, there's a pheasant silhouette, I don't know if any of you have seen it. But my grandfather shot an albino pheasant, so it's pure white. So this is something that was always in my mind. So that silhouette's, yeah, and I guess the green is the Australian, green and gold is the Australian part of me. So, but we are now, yeah, in our 3rd year, and I still don't know what the business is or where it's going to go, but it has been growing quite well, especially in this year. So, which is fantastic. And in my spare time, I actually I am still working, still do have a full-time job. So we've just opened up. I've moved into healthcare now. So we just opened up for Oceania Group. So we just opened up a very high-end retirement resort in St. Heliers. It's called the Heliers. So you might have seen quite a lot of advertising for that. So we have just opened up the care unit there. So we've got room for 79 independent residents and 31 care residents. So we'll eat 5 times a day. But the concept there, it's still very high end, and we don't have a food cost, so we are buying caviar and Queensland prawns and oysters from all around the country and giving them the best of the best. And we're not charging, we're not trying to make money off them. We actually just want them to stay, bring their family and friends and dine with us. So that's going very well too. Yeah, so I guess that's, you know, that's really it. That's what it's hard to say about that.
You might be able to throw some light on a situation we had in Prague, and that my wife is one of those people that likes to try something different. She likes to try the local food.
Yep.
And we were at this restaurant in Prague one night, and she said to the waiter, "What is this mouflon? I'll have that." And he couldn't explain what the mouflon was.
Right.
And we've never ever been able to find out exactly what it was, but he was sort of saying it was sort of, you know, it sounded like it was some form of mountain goat.
Yeah.
Anyhow, she ordered this mouflon, so I'll try it, you know. Well, you're mad, you know, just get something that you can eat. Anyhow, she didn't like it. Have you ever heard of it?
I think it's deer.
Deer?
Yeah.
Former deer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the goat is a kozel, so it's yeah. So I think it's a deer. Yeah.
Yeah, Prague is probably one of the nicest cities I've ever been to. We had so much fun there. Like, it was in a world that we were never in. Like, there's just poets and the theatre, and they just get you on. You pay your ticket on the street and you go to this little block building, and you're in there, and there's about 20 people there, and some recital of violins. It was just unbelievable. And we met Nadal, all the top tennis, Federer, all the top tennis, because it was a tennis tournament.
Yeah.
It was the first year of the that indoor flashing lights, bloody commercial thing. It was the first year of that.
Right.
So we got tickets for that night and went and saw the best tennis in the world. Great place.
It's hot in the summer too. You know, it was we were there.
Yeah.
We were there in the summer, and it was hot, and particularly queuing up to get into the castle. And,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
God, that was a force. Yeah. No, it's a great spot. Yeah, I thoroughly recommend it.
Amazing beer as well. So.
What are the latest food trends that you're quite willing to, that you're keen to try, and where do you see food in New Zealand heading?
It's I think the food, New Zealand food's always going to stick with sort of Asian fusion, and it's not like Australia, because you had a lot of the Greek and the Italian influence, and we've seen to miss that. We've sort of got the Indian, which isn't, it's just a curry really. I mean, I'm not saying it's not anything special, but it's the variations seem to quite dead end there for Indian cuisine. Asian, again, there's a lot of Asian fusion, and to be fair, actually a lot of the renowned chefs now, they are going more into the indigenous Kiwi flavours and trying to, go a bit harder into that, like with horopito and pickle, but I mean, again, it sort of does stop. For my cuisine, it's all about fresh food and trying to make everything from scratch. I think that's what people notice the most.
On your website, you have product to sell.
Yeah.
So lovely pickles or chutneys.
Yeah.
And is that something you started up yourself?
Yeah. I was trying to sell back to chefs, because I knew, especially in COVID, and there's still a massive shortage of chefs. A lot of people need visas. So I was trying to make, again, handmade products, which to sell to the restaurants, and so it can save them on labour costs. And then we obviously just did little jars for, domestic, or for raising platters and for events and parties. But
You missed the hotel?
no.
No.
The last one was just a nightmare, because we closed down to be the COVID, and then when we were reopening again, it was staffing us, because it was massive. I needed about 50 chefs and about 20 kitchen hands. That's what we needed, just for the brigade to run daily operations, because we had 5 different outlets. So then you can imagine the front of house too, what they need to accommodate. Because we had the Rugby World Cup, all the women's teams coming in, and it was just like a nightmare with no staff. So I did the reopen and finished the year up, but then I wanted to focus on my.
Was there a massive refurbishment after the COVID?
We did do one. Yep, it's finished now. So we spent about $30 million on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I imagine you just look at the hotels. There was virtually no maintenance being done on the grounds or anything.
Yeah.
They must be deteriorating quite quickly.
The actual hotel, Grand Million's got amazing bones. It was built in the 80s, and they did a really good job of it, front and the back house areas. It's just a massive building. So it does have good structure and bones. And the owners did try to sell it confidentially, but they wanted about 330 million for it, but their closest offer was 260. So they decided to reinvest in the F&B offering and the conferencing rooms. But we'll see how that works for them. But yeah, owned by a Singapore company too.
What's the atmosphere in the kitchens that you've worked in? Is it like very harsh and kind of more military style, like you sometimes see in the health kitchen, or is that just for TV and your actual experience is very different?
It was very. I think. It was. It has been tough. But when you're young, you can bounce back. And then when I don't know, when you've got your own brigade, you've got two choices. You can carry on going on, treating everyone. You can be very direct with people. But I think as I've matured and grown into more of a business, because it is a business, you want to learn about the business. And I think you need to treat people, you need to take the time out for people. And obviously there's a time where you can be firm but fair, but yelling and screaming and spitting the dummy, it's gotta stop, because it's just a big show, and you need to control yourself. So, and you can't retain staff. It's easy to get rid of staff, but to retain and keep staff, keep them engaged, that's the challenge. So yeah, for me, I did yell and scream, but then I've definitely walked away from that and tried to be a bit more mature. And yeah, it is your business. Yeah.
The beatings will continue until morale improves.
Yeah. Cool.
Something like that.
All right.
Right, so the thanks goes to Rob today.
Many thanks, Charles, for agreeing to speak to us this morning. Look, we're a very small group, but we really value speakers of your calibre coming along to tell us about their experiences and achievements. It was good to hear about your grandfather coming to New Zealand and starting your interest in food, your trials and tribulations in Prague and Australia, and really we wish you well for the future, and I'll ask everyone to thank you in a normal way.